Thanks a lot for coming in.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Something about this community appeals to you?
This is a wonderful place to live.
For Kelowna Now, this is Camp Mulgat. And we're joined by Kelowna RCMP Superintendent Brent Mundle. Thanks for coming in. It's been a tough time the last few weeks. A lot of attention focused on the RCMP with regards to sexual assault files that might not have been handled the way people expect. There's been a review done locally and a federally mandated one. How do you take all that, and where are we now?
Okay. Well, it's certainly been a difficult time for the detachment over the last months, with some of the information with respect to unfounded rates that have been reported in the media. Recently, we reported back on our findings with respect to the in-depth study on that. And, what we took away from the study is we determined that we were making administrative errors with respect to our final scoring of files when it comes to stats collection purposes, and that's where the unfounded piece comes in. And there were a few files that were returned as well that were identified as receiving or requiring further investigation. And from that, we've examined it. We're introducing some training associated to improving the administrative portion of it, and we're introducing training to assist us in improving our investigational abilities in this area as well.
So that means that all members are going to get some additional training that will help them do their best when they're confronted with a sexual assault case.
Yeah, that's correct. The RCMP has a number of online courses in our inventory with respect to not only sex assault investigations, but some of the training actually applies to all types of investigations. And this isn't unusual or new training. There's been a trend across North America with police agencies as we become more informed about sexual assault investigations and trauma, and a whole course of information and training that's now available for officers.
Right. When I spoke to the Elizabeth Fry Society about all this, they seem really pleased that additional training is happening, and especially pleased that there's going to be a new unit set up. Maybe you could talk about that. So for the first time, there's going to be, I think, 4 members set aside whose job it will be to be up to the moment on training and how best to handle difficult sexual assault cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, over the last year, we've had a vision in mind, and I've spoken to it about council, and they've approved additional resources to our detachment to assist our general investigation section. And as those new resources have been realized over the last few months, we're now in a position where we can take some existing general investigation section resources, or detectives as people would know them from TV, and allow us now to create a dedicated 4-person sex assault team.
So that wouldn't be the group that would take all sexual assault files, but they'll be there to maybe do that in some cases, but in other cases support members who have a file like that.
Yeah, obviously with only 4 members, they wouldn't be able to take on the investigative capacity of all of our sex assault files. So the strategy that we have currently in place, most investigations go through a frontline member initially. Our frontline members now have the support of additional new resources that we're calling a general investigation support team that work with our frontline members on a day-to-day basis, and they're immediately available to help them with more complex files, including sex assaults. Some of those files will be able to remain at that level and be investigated at that level. There will be some files that are perhaps more serious in nature or more complex. They would escalate to the sex assault team to manage and investigate, but the sex assault team will also provide sort of an umbrella function in the sense that they'll review all our concluded sex assault investigations to ensure accuracy with the scoring, as well as ensuring quality of the investigation. And they'll also be available as a resource to our frontline members to provide them investigative assistance or guidance on these types of files.
So you mentioned that kind of scoring issue. But would you also acknowledge that this is an area that going into this, that your detachment could do better on?
I would say, there's always room for improvement, and as new techniques, as we become more informed about trauma and bias and things like that, there's always room for improvement in how we police and conduct investigations. So I think this provided us with an opportunity to identify an area that we still need to develop in.
Right. Now, you mentioned online training, and I'm imagining, sometimes when people are told, okay, you've got to take this extra training, and they take it online, if their approach to it is, I've got to do this, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're embracing it and they really want to suck up that information. What is your sense among the members as to whether or not they are on board with getting better?
Yeah, as I mentioned a few moments ago, policing is something where you never get to a point where you know everything, and it's a changing environment. We're always adapting and having to provide training and learning with respect to changes in case law and policy and procedures, and this is another one of those areas. Over the last few weeks, in speaking with our membership, there's some training requirements that I have said as a result of this that we'll make mandatory within the office, and I'm quite happy to say that the ones that we've been implementing to this point, the completion rate is extremely high in the short period of time that we've had to do it. So definitely our members see the necessity, and they're certainly fulfilling on what I've asked of them here to date in the last few weeks.
Sometimes when people are criticized, though, their first reaction is to kind of push back. You're not sensing that that's the attitude?
Yeah, no, not at all. Obviously, the way this portrayed itself in the media, certainly had an impact on the detachment and our membership there. They certainly realize or understand the seriousness of some of the comments and the concerns that have been expressed, and they're working hard to address that all. We're all there for a reason, and it's public safety.
Right.
So, in pursuit of that, they're certainly prepared to do what they need to do to ensure that they can provide individually the best quality service.
So additional training, a specific section now that can deal with these things, it's all good news. But, going through this, there's... You get mud on your boots when something like this happens, and I think that there might be some people out there, young women especially, that are still kind of worried. Like, maybe, I know a lot of cases don't get reported at any rate, and if they're thinking, oh, maybe the Kelowna detachment has a bit of a problem on sexual assault files, that might make them feel reluctant. So is there still a job to do to sort of reassure the public and to sort of regain confidence?
Yeah, I think obviously what's happened here in the last few months has damaged that confidence within the community with respect to these types of investigations. I'm hopeful that the changes that we've made will lead to improvements in this area. As I've mentioned before, we've got 200 officers at our detachment. They're all very dedicated employees. I see them doing good work every day. I would hate to see this evolve into a situation where a victim doesn't come forward because of a concern around the, potentially the investigation that may be conducted. And, with the changes we've made, I'm confident that, we'll be able to better address the issue, and, people shouldn't hesitate to come forward because, we're certainly there and available to do our job.
Let me ask the same question this way. If there's a young woman out there who's listening to this conversation, worried about how it will go if they bring forward a complaint, how will they be treated if they come forward to the detachment and say, I've been sexually assaulted?
As I discussed with the new training, there's an understanding amongst our members as to how individuals need to be treated, and that's evolved over the last few years with respect to different things that have been introduced. So, I'm confident to say that, they'll be treated respectfully.
They won't be disbelieved.
No, and I think too, getting into that part of the conversation, when we talk about the term unfounded, I think the way it translated into some portions in the media was that it was not investigated, and that's not the case. All of the files that we've discussed were investigated. Sometimes the conclusions at the end of them, with respect to the scoring and that type of thing, weren't accurate.
Right. Okay. So everything gets at least an initial investigation.
Yeah, that's correct. And, what happens is, unfortunately, in some instances, there may not be enough evidence to meet the elements of the actual offense, and a charge can't be proceeded with. But that's not the same as unfounded, right? And, being a victim of any type of crime can be very traumatic. Right. And I can certainly see where if there isn't a charge laid, or there's an expectation of a charge being laid and that doesn't happen, that too can lend a person to believe or feel that they maybe perhaps aren't supported or aren't believed, and that's not the case.
Right. So lots of positives going forward then, right? I guess the old saying is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Do you think you come out as a better detachment after this?
For sure. I think anytime, you enter into a situation where you have some adversity, and you take and, examine yourself, as we did with our sexual assault review and things like that, you come out with recommendations and areas for improvement. And, that's just how we get stronger and we get better. And I think every organization is like that.
Terrific. Thanks for coming in and telling us about it.
Thanks very much.
Superintendent Mundle, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.